live. Ya ma 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 ya 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 oh yinam da 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 oh yinam da 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 oh yinam da 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 ma yinam oh yinam. Give us another 10, 15, 20 seconds. I'm just sharing it on 2 more platforms. And we should be good to go. So I love you know. So I love you know. So I love you know. So you know. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, from the Chabad Lubavitch Center. Oh, I hear someone coming. I hear a human entering the shul. It must be, it's locked, so he has to have a key. Hope he's a good guy. Oh, it looks like Baruch. Is that you? Okay. Good evening from the Chabad Lubavitch Center for Jewish Life and Learning. It's Aseres Yimei Tshuva. It's the 10 days of return, of repentance between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Tonight is also a very special night. It's the 6th of Tishrei. I mean, in Montana, it'll be the 6th of Tishrei in about an hour or 45 minutes. It's the when the sun finishes setting and nightfall appears. It's the day on which the Rebbe's mother, the Rebbe Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, his father passed away in 1944 while living under the communist torture in Kazakhstan, and he's buried in Almaty, Kazakhstan. But his mother, who was there with his father, taking care of his father and guiding his father and being with the love of her life, she survived and eventually came to America in 1947. The Rebbe actually flew to Paris to pick her up. It's the only time the Rebbe flew on a plane, and he brought her back to the United States. And she passed away on the 6th of Tishrei between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur on a Shabbos in 1964, in the fall of 1964. So she lived 20 years longer than her husband. But then again, she wasn't tortured as much as her husband was by the communists. So tonight is her yahrzeit, Vav Tishrei. And so we commemorate the yahrzeit of a very, very special woman. But the focus of tonight's class is Yom Kippur, because we find ourselves halfway between the 10 days of Tshuva, which starts at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. We're now today on the 5th day, going into the 6th day, and then Yom Kippur starts Sunday night. And so we need to have a conversation about Yom Kippur and about Tshuva, about repentance, but more about a very basic question. Is Yom Kippur about the soul, or is Yom Kippur about our body? Or if I were to rephrase that question, is Judaism about being an ascetic, being a hermit, being someone seeking to distance themselves from physicality? Or is it a religion, a way of life that insists and requires of us to be devoted to the physical and work within the physical? Yom Kippur, as the Talmud says in the tractate of Shabbat, of Shabbos, V'lekdosh Hashem mechubot, for the holy, God's Holy One, there is respect and honor. The Talmud says this refers to Yom Kippur. So when we talk about a holy day, like high holy days or holy day or a holiday, in Judaism, there is no greater, holier day than Yom Kippur, more than any other Shabbos and any other Jewish holiday. Furthermore, if you look biblically, twice in the book of Leviticus, in the book of Vayikra, Yom Kippur is referred to as Shabbat, Shabbaton. That's where the word Shabbaton comes from. Shabbos, Shabbosan, or Shabbat, Shabbaton, which means the Sabbath of all Sabbaths. which means it supersedes everything else. Now we see this also, this holiness that's unique to Yom Kippur. We see this also in the service of the Jewish people, that unlike every other Sabbath, Shabbos, and unlike every other Jewish holiday where you're supposed to have pleasure and you're supposed to eat and drink and spend time with your wife, a husband and wife should spend time intimately. Friday night is known Talmudically, the Talmud says that's a great time for intimacy. Yom Kippur, there's no intimacy, there's no ointments to make your skin look beautiful, there's no eating or drinking, there's no wearing leather shoes. We're supposed to be like angels. It's a day of fasting, it's a day of human suffering. We leave all our physicality behind, all our mundane temptations behind, and it's a day to connect with God. But you would think if that's the case, if it's all about leaving our bodies behind, leaving our physicality behind, then you would think that you should totally forget about your body altogether. There should be no focus on your body. And yet, even on the holiest day on Yom Kippur, a person is not supposed to forget about their body. You're supposed to remember your body. Focus on your body. It's not just a soulful day. It's not just a day where you're going to go nourish your soul for the whole year, which is never a thing, by the way. It's important to come to Shul on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. It's important to connect with your Jewish community. But the idea of doing it twice a year and thinking that that's going to suffice for your spiritual battery is ridiculous. And anyone that even thinks about it knows that it's ridiculous. But let's assume that's even a thing. It's not just about the soul. Yom Kippur is very much about the body, despite how it may seem apparently that it's about just the soul, right? Because on the one hand, it's Achaz Bashana, it's the one day of year where our soul connects. But on the other hand, it's very much connected to the body, as we will see in just a moment. Let's talk for a moment. I'm going to digress for a moment. And I should actually mention, because it's only right, that everything I'm sharing with you tonight is from a combination of 3 different talks from the Rebbe from the 50s and 60s, but it's a combination of 3 different Farbrengens on this topic, and I think it weaves itself together into a beautiful tapestry as long as you can follow along. But I think I have it down to I have it down in my mind in a way that I could convey to you that should actually make perfect sense as long as you're with the program. What do we read on Yom Kippur? When you come to Shul on Rosh Hashanah, we read about Isaac and about Abraham and Sarah giving birth to Isaac at an old age. We read about the Akedah when Abraham takes Isaac up to be slaughtered on Mount Moriah, which he doesn't have to do at the end, but the whole Akedah experience. What do we read on Yom Kippur and Shul in the morning when you come to services? It's a fascinating thing. You come to Shul, and because it's Yom Kippur, and on Yom Kippur in the temple and the tabernacle was the day in which the high priest served in his greatest capacity in the Holy of Holies once a year. So we naturally read about the service of the high priest on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, in the temple, in the tabernacle, when he served in the holy position. But the reading begins with these words. Vayihi acharei mos shnei bnei Aaron. This occurred after the death of Aaron's 2 sons. B'karvasam of Bnei Hashem vayamusu, when they came close to God and they died. And it's referring to the story. Aaron had 4 sons. He had Nadav and Avihu, Elazar and Isamar. Nadav and Avihu, when the tabernacle, when the Mishkan was inaugurated, Nadav and Avihu entered the Holy of Holies in a way that they shouldn't have. And they ended up dying in the Holy of Holies and being dragged out and taken to be buried. Being that we read those words at the beginning of the reading, there has to be a correlation. It's not just a coincidence. Nothing in Judaism is a coincidence. That even though the primary reading is about the operation of the high priest on Yom Kippur in the temple, the fact that it begins with the words about Aaron's 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, who died in the Holy of Holies, that is also a vital lesson for us in how we are to perceive what this most important day of Yom Kippur is really about. Of course, if someone doesn't know any better and they just open up a Chumash, they open up the 5 books of Moses, they read the story of Nadav and Avihu, they go, oh my gosh, oh my. These guys went into the Holy of Holies. They were never sanctioned to do so. And they went into the Holy of Holies. Of course they deserved to die. They were just, some would say that they were drunk. Some would say that they were just inappropriate. But the Ohr HaChaim HaKadosh, the 16th century great Torah commentator who lived in Europe, then Turkey and Israel, Ohr HaChaim says that they were holy as can be. They were acting on a holy and spiritual yearning to connect with God on the highest of levels. That's why after they died, Moses turns to Aaron and says, this is what God meant when he told me, Bikroivai Ekadesh, that I will be sanctified through those that are close to me. And as Rashi tells us, Moses said to Aaron, I thought when God said that he'd be sanctified through those who are close to him, I thought he'd be sanctified through either me or you, Moses or Aaron. Little did I know that what God intended was that he was going to be sanctified through your two sons, Nadav and Abihu. That by them entering the Holy of Holies, even though at the end they died because it was not the right thing to do, but they never broke any rule. There was never a rule not to go into. The rule happened after they went in. Right? We were commanded after Nadav and Abihu went into the Holy of Holies. They were never supposed to do what they did. But there was never a command. Nevertheless, they were considered sinful because at the end of the day, trying to connect with God to a point where your body and soul are now going to separate, and your body will not, and your soul will not be able to be contained in your body. You'll be in some state of holy ecstasy in which your soul actually leaves your body, is not the intention of God. And even though they had great intentions, the reason they died was not as a punishment. It was actually a consequence of their, not even a consequence. It was a direct result. It was a cause and effect of their behavior. They exuded this yearning for godliness to the point that they went into the Holy of Holies. They were yearning so much to connect with God on the most one level, on the deepest oneness possible, and they got what they wanted. Yes. They ascended to God, the fire went into them, and their bodies left, their souls left their bodies, their souls went and connected with God, and their bodies died. So it wasn't really a punishment as much as a cause and effect. They wanted it, they got it. But what we learned from that, more than anything else, yes, we learned that you shouldn't be drunk in the tabernacle, and we learned from that you should stick to the structure that God intended. But what we really learned from that, if we want to get to the bottom of it, is that holiness isn't always, the greatest desire for holiness and connection to God isn't always the end game. Actually, quite the contrary. You can yearn for God, but if it's going to take you away from your bodily experience where God wants you, where your body and soul cannot live as a united front anymore, as one entity, a body with a soul contained in it, or a soul with a body hovering over it, then you've missed the point. Because when God created us, he created us and put us into this world to transform the physical, to elevate the physical and the mundane and turn it into something greater. That's why the Medrash says, the famous Medrash in Tanchuma, that the reason the entire creation of the world happens is because God wanted a dwelling place in this physical world, in the lowest of the low. So God, the Torah is telling us, hey, you can't make God a dwelling place in this world if you're running away from the world, if you're seeking asceticism, if you're seeking hermetism, if you're seeking to go into isolation, to go away from the world and run away from the evils and the challenges and the mundane experience. I just want holiness. I just want God. I want to stand in the forest to connect with God for all eternity. I want to live like the Unabomber for holy reasons. I'm not saying you should, that if you live that way, you're a Unabomber. I'm just saying if you want to live like a Unabomber for the sake of holiness, that's not Judaism. Judaism is if you don't run away from the world as much as you want to run away from the world, and you find godliness and bring godliness and reveal godliness in the physical experience. Now we can understand perhaps why when a Jew comes to Shul on Yom Kippur, as we will on Monday morning, and we're going to open up the Torah scroll and we're going to read, what are we going to read, the first words? Sure, we're going to read about the Kohen, the high priest service, but we're going to read the words Achrei Moshe Shnei Bnei Aaron. We're going to talk about Aaron's two sons who died. Why? Because on Yom Kippur, we need to remember that. Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. You're yearning for spirituality. You're feeling close to God. And that's where you can get caught up in that ideal or that warped philosophy that somehow the world is bad and I need to run away from it. Instead of the world is challenging, it's full of weeds, and I need to be God's gardener and come clean it up a little bit and elevate it. because the Nadav and Avi who made that mistake once, no one has to ever make it again. I would agree with you from a personal, if I was just making choices on my own, it sounds pretty nice to find a cabin somewhere in, I don't know, Northwest Territories, Yellowknife or somewhere, go find a cabin and run away from the world and live potentially a peaceful, calm, tranquil life without fulfilling one iota of our mission in this world. We weren't sent to this world to live on vacation. We were sent to this world to be productive, meaningful gifts to creation from God, and in the process, elevate the world with it. Nadav and Avihu missed that point, and we are here to make sure we don't miss it again. That's why on Yom Kippur we read about them, to remind us that we shouldn't get caught up in that again. And that's why it's very interesting halacha. You'll find it, I think, fairly fascinating. At the end of the Yom Kippur service, right, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, is serving in the tabernacle. The whole process of all the times he has to change his clothing and go to the mikvah again and bring the incense offering and go into the Holy of Holies. He's finally done. He made it out alive, which was a unique occurrence because many of them died. Comes out, what does it say in the tractate of Yuma, the tractate that talks about Yom Kippur in the Talmud and the Mishnah? It says, they escort him to his home. He made a yontif for his, his close people, his loved ones. When he comes out of the holiest of places peacefully. And this is printed, in addition to the Mishnah, it's printed in the Rambam, Maimonides' Code of Jewish Law, in the section of the service of Yom Kippur. Now, it happened after the service of Yom Kippur, yet it's included in the service of Yom Kippur. And that actually, based on what we just said, it actually makes perfect sense. It is part of the service of Yom Kippur. You want to know if the high priest really got the memo of what Yom Kippur is about? It's not only what he does on Yom Kippur in the tabernacle or the temple, it's what he does when he leaves. When he goes home after Yom Kippur and he survived, and now he's going to do what? Make a big celebration with good food. He's breaking his fast, right? Good food and good drinks and celebration with his friends and family, his loved ones, celebrating his success of coming out alive. That's part of the Yom Kippur service, because that means he didn't forget what Yom Kippur is all about. He didn't go, I can't leave the temple. It's so holy. I don't want to leave the holy. No. Yom Kippur's over. Gegangen. Let's go party. Let's go make a celebration. Let's go eat, because that's the beautiful food. By the way, it's interesting that in Jewish law, by the way, if you look in the Torah, in Shulchan Aruch, it says that on Matzah Yom Kippur, right? That's why in a lot of Jewish communities, including ours, we make a beautiful break the fast. We're going to have a beautiful one here, sponsored by Amram and Justine Phelps. But it says in the Code of Jewish Law that after Yom Kippur, after the fast is over, you should make a seudah, you should make a festive meal, not just ragalach and coffee, a festive meal. Ubas kol yotzes, when the Jews are celebrating, there's a heavenly voice that comes out and says, go and enjoy your meal with joy. What are we making such a big deal about to break the fast? Because after fasting on Yom Kippur, the break the fast is the proof that you understood the memo about what Yom Kippur is really about, which is to take all that energy, all that spirituality, all that inspiration, all the holiness, and translate it into how I'm going to live my life in the world. I'm not running away from the world. I'm living in the world and transitioning from the holy state into the practical in the way God would want me to. Not running away from physicality and materialism, but infusing physicality and materialism with a godly spark, with a holy experience, with something spiritual and good. Now we can understand why Yom Kippur seems a little schizophrenic. It's a little confusing. Why? On the one hand, what do we do on Yom Kippur? We distance ourselves from physicality. We don't eat, we don't drink, no intimacy, no leather, no ointments, right? We're trying to bond with God in a state of fasting. On the other hand, we're supposed to think the entire Yom Kippur that it's all about how we're going to bring this stuff home after Yom Kippur in our day-to-day life. You would think that it sounds contradictory. Which one is it? Should I think about my soul or think about my body? Am I thinking about leaving physicality or going back to physicality? But it's not really, that's only a superficial contradiction. When you get to the depth of it, that's exactly what spirituality is about. It's not about eternal disconnect from physicality like a hermit or like an ascetic. No, it's about the physical. But in order for me to be refreshing and renewed and get reinvigorated, I need to have a day like Yom Kippur. So I uplift myself a bit out of the grime and the grubkeit, the physical temptation, indulgence, addictions that we have. Just give ourselves a little break so we can taste the holiness a little bit. But don't forget that now I got to take that new spiritual state that I find myself in and learn how to translate it into how I live in the physical world. It's a very interesting thing. Because on Yom Kippur, what's the rule? If someone's in shul and they start fainting, I still remember as a child, you're not allowed to break your fast if you faint. Fainting is not death. If you get cardiac arrest, obviously we wake you up and we get you awake. No matter, right? If a life is in danger, there's no problem. Fainting is not necessarily your life in danger. So what do you do if someone faints in shul? When I was growing up in the Rebbe's shul, they had those crazy smelling salts, strong like hell. If you ever smell that stuff, I don't know I forgot what it was made out of, but if you smell that stuff, you woke up in a jiffy. And I watched it multiple times in my childhood. So a guy is fainting, and you see a guy, it's 18 hours into Yom Kippur, and he's conking out. And you say, oh, yeah, we got to get it. No water. Not yet. If we feel if the medics that come conclude that his life is really in danger, then of course we don't break anything. Actually, God asks us to give him food and drink. But what would we do? Use the smelling salts. And you'd see the guy, he's laying there in a faint. I'll never forget it and then he gives a jump up like you can't even imagine because that stuff goes near his nose. And boy, does he give it. I don't even know why they don't use it in every ambulance. It'd save a lot of money. The insurance companies would be happy. You wouldn't have to use IV or anything. Just give him a smelling salt. You wake him up for 2 months. But anyhow, that's a commercial message. So you'd think, right, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day, the most important thing is to connect your soul with God and to bond with holiness. So if a person is fainting, you'd think that maybe the person is not doing well. You'd say, let's let him have a little bit of a meal and then send him back to shul so he can continue bonding with God and becoming spiritual. Instead, what does the Torah say? What does Allah say? Better to go home and sleep in bed with your migraine till the end of Yom Kippur and fast than, God forbid, to put a morsel of food or drink into your mouth. If you're looking at it from a spiritual holiness perspective, it seems odd, because what would make more sense, let him get a quick sandwich and get back to shul and get busy with his connection to God, because ultimately that will be amazing for his soul, but it won't. Because it's about having the spiritual connection to Hashem, but being able to carry it later into your physical being. Therefore, the fast, which is all about the body, not the soul, is the focus. If it was only about the soul, right, we'd say, have a sandwich, go pray, because it's good for your soul. But it's about the body it's about the soul in the body. It's all about the body. Even when you're not eating, it's about the body taking a small break from eating in order to be able to become a holier body tomorrow. And if that's the case, we need to focus on the body, even on Yom Kippur when he's not doing well. Well, actually, I shouldn't say he or she is not doing well. We still make it a focus about the body's fasting, and therefore we make sure he continues to fast better than sitting in shul and davening, because it's about the body. So here's the key message of Yom Kippur. I labeled this class on Facebook and on YouTube, is Yom Kippur about the body or the soul? And I'm going to answer that unequivocally that it's about the body. Sure, it's about how the soul interacts with the body, but it's all about the body, because all of our existence is focused. Our mission in life, the fulfillment of the soul's existence in this world, is all about what we do with the body and whether we have the ability to be holy and then take that holiness and transform it into our physical well-being. And this is so vital because so often there's ideologies that have nothing to do with Judaism that permeate Jewish minds, right? Too many Jews have hung out with Buddhism, Hinduism, sometimes doses of Christianity, even if it's not in the name of Christianity. And we have these weird ideas about what holiness looks like. You know, we think of Moses on a mountaintop, wrapped in a tallis with a shofar sticking out, instead of Moses standing in the morning in his tent, wrapped in his tallis and tefillin and doing morning services. We think of Sarah, right, Abraham's wife, being some holy lady in a tent, instead of thinking of her being the one that was feeding her guests and lighting her Shabbos candles and being this most incredible matriarch of the Jewish people. We have this eating, you're doing the intermittent fasting for 13 weeks, and it says that my internet is unstable. It says my internet's unstable on Zoom. I guess I'm glad that it doesn't think it's good. Okay.
You're stable again.
Okay, good. I'm glad it said the computer was unstable and not me. It could have said, Rabbi, you're unstable. That wouldn't be good. So the point is that when a day like Yom Kippur comes, of course, we don't eat, we don't drink. For those that don't know, it's a dry fast. There's no chachmas. We don't play games with Yom Kippur. In Bozeman, it starts at 7:14 p.m. on Sunday night. It does not end till 8 p.m. Monday evening. Find out in your community what time it starts and ends. That's not a game. That's the day that our soul is having that oneness with God through fasting and no eating, no drinking. And don't play games with it. Don't give me your story that you have to take some pill for your arthritis. The Jews have been through worse. You'll take your pill for your arthritis before the fast starts and right after it ends, and you'll be okay. I know hundreds and hundreds of Jews that have pills to take. I'm not talking about life-threatening pills. I'm not talking about if you're doing chemo, that they have to speak to a Rav to discuss the halachic ramifications of that. But just regular people, like the rest of America, who pop some pill or another. It's not an excuse to drink water. It's not an excuse to break your fast. It's Yom Kippur. But while you're fasting in shul, and while you're feeling all holy, and while you're pouring out your guts to God with your prayers that you want Him to sign and seal you in the book of life on Yom Kippur, you want Him to seal that verdict for an amazing year, and you're making all these commitments to holy things. You're going to think about God. You're going to talk about God. Don't forget your body. The fast is your body. The party after Yom Kippur is your body, because it's about taking the holiness and spirituality and infusing your bodily decisions. The choices we make with our body. What we eat. Are we eating kosher or not eating kosher? What we're doing on Shabbos. Are we skiing? Are we concerting? Are we bobcat gaming? Or are we Shabbosing? This year I heard not the Super Bowl. I heard that Monday night is going to be Monday Night Football. During the Elah, in the holiest moment of Yom Kippur, at the end, there's going to be Monday Night Football. Don't be caught watching Monday Night Football this week. TiVo it, Shmivo it, I don't care what you do, but don't ruin the beauty of Yom Kippur. It defeats the whole purpose. The purpose is to take the holiness of what we represent, what our relationship with God and Torah represents, and infuse it into every aspect of our life. So that if, God forbid, you're eating in a non-kosher restaurant, you're ordering fish that happens to be kosher. Even though the fish is cooked in a non-kosher pot, at least you're not ordering the treif meat, or you're not mixing milk and meat. Or if you can't keep the whole Shabbos, at least you're rushing home to make it home so you can light the candles before sunset. And if you're not putting on tefillin every day, at least twice a week, you're trying to do it. And if you're not keeping the mikveh your whole life, or you never had the experience because at the time when you were married, mikveh wasn't an option for you, if you've never been to a mikveh, make an appointment. Call Chavi, make an appointment at least once in your life to go to the mikveh, to immerse yourself in purity. Find a way to increase your spirituality, but spirituality the way it's infused in your physical life. Running away from life is always an easy escape in all aspects. Running away from reality is the easy way out. The more meaningful way to live, more productive way to live, is to take the incredible holiness of those 26 hours of Yom Kippur and bring it home. And how are you going to know? You don't even have to wait till the morning after Yom Kippur. That night, when you come to break the fast, after completing successfully with a healthy dose of Jewish pride, that 26 hours, no eating, no drinking. We just had a fast this week for Tzom Gedalia on Monday. So the fast was only from 5:21 a.m. till 8:04 p.m. It was a long one. It was a schlep. I was not very happy with Gedalia personally, but I fasted. Not because I'm a hero, because that's what Jews do. We take little breaks. Yom Kippur is the biggest, most amazing, most important break. Take little breaks of asceticism to remind us that that's not the ultimate. The ultimate is to take all of that holiness and spirituality and infuse it into the way we live our lives. So when I wish someone to have an easy fast and a meaningful Yom Kippur, I don't just say that because it's a cool thing to say. I mean it. It should be an easy fast, but it should also be a meaningful Yom Kippur, that we don't forget what it's really about. That's why, by the way, on Yom Kippur, and you know this, Seth, because you've been at services before, maybe someone else here has, and they've heard me say this. What do we read at Mincha on Yom Kippur? So now, Mincha in the afternoon, we come back at 6 o'clock, and we read, not Ma'ariv after the fast is over, but Mincha, we take out the Torah, and what do we read also from the book of Leviticus? All the sexual prohibitions of the Torah. Bestiality. I'm standing in Shul on Yom Kippur, and you need to tell me not to sleep with a horse? You need to tell me not to have a relationship with a caterpillar? That's what I need to hear. I made it all the way 24 hours into Yom Kippur. There's only 2 hours left. That's what I need to hear as a Jew? Says God, yes, that's what you need to hear. You know why? Because sometimes when you're so holy and spiritual and shul, you forget that it's about how you live your life tomorrow and tonight. So we're going to give you all the realities, a reality check of all the human temptation possibilities to remind you that if your holiness doesn't translate to how you live on Tuesday, then it's a very big question about the impact that Monday of Yom Kippur made. But if Monday of Yom Kippur, you stuck to having a meaningful Yom Kippur, remembering what it's really about, it's not just the soul, but it's specifically the soul and the body, unlike Nadav and Avihu, the two sons who died because they went overboard, then we'll be able to break our fast and go straight into those 5 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot, uplifted, inspired, and infused with holiness that affects how we live our life. If you come from Yom Kippur and you go to Walmart after you break the fast, if you went to Walmart after the fast and you steal a bottle of water that cost $1, and in your mind you say, whatever, I forgot to pay for it, but you know what, the Waltons have enough money, they don't need it. You're a thief. And that means Yom Kippur didn't affect your existence the way it should. It's about how you translate it into your day-to-day. And hereby is my wish that indeed you have an easy fast, a meaningful Yom Kippur. Remember that it's about a body with a soul and a soul with a body. It's not one without the other. It's a marriage between the body and the soul. And if we do that, we are indeed assured that the verdict on Yom Kippur, if God bangs the hammer down in his courtroom by Ne'ilah for the Jews of Montana and beyond, and for all of you listening and watching, he goes, these guys figured it out. They know what they're doing. Boom. Verdict is innocent, not guilty, innocent, forgiven. Salachti, I forgive them. Let's start new. Let's start a new page. And you go right into the year, infusing every physical and mundane moment with holiness, godliness, meaning, and not living a frivolous life with emptiness, voidness, stupidity that doesn't bring anything good to us or anyone around us. So an early good Shabbos, a early easy fast, a early meaningful Yom Kippur, and with Hashem's help, if my sukkah is standing and everything's good to go, I look forward to seeing you back here next Wednesday. No, sukkah starts the following Friday. But in order for me to come to class, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place. So God willing, everything will be in place, and we'll see you back here next week. Bezrat Hashem, have a wonderful and meaningful Yom Kippur.